Greetings to everyone. It's a great pleasure and honor to be joining and welcoming you to this event. I'm Tafadza Pasmanajga, a partner in the International Litigation Department at Foley Hoag in Washington, and one of the co-chairs of the Basel Task Force, along with Catherine Powell. Basel grew out of a call issued to the Society in 2014 by its then president, Judge Gabriel Kirk MacDonald, and Henry Richardson, and a few others, that the Society should increase the number and influence of Blacks in the society and in international law in general. And the task force was formed then by the ASIL president, Laurie Damrosch, and it's now about 38 practitioners and professors of law who seek to affirm, strengthen, and advance the longstanding tradition of Blacks practicing international law in all arenas. And given this goal, we were thrilled really when Shaba Shastri, one of our speakers today from the US State Department, reached out to talk to us about her work and interest in collaborating with Basel in order to help the department continue advancing its goals in diversity and inclusion. And it's been an excellent teamwork to collaborate on the event with Government Attorneys Interest Group and the Minorities in International Law Interest Group. And it's wonderfully fortuitous, as Wes mentions, that it happens to be on the first day in which Juneteenth is now a national holiday. As you know, and as some people are learning, Juneteenth is an occasion to celebrate the end of slavery and to renew our commitment to the United States' ongoing quest for genuine equality and inclusion. And I think, you know, having the people working on government issues and international law within the government is an important element in this quest for equality and inclusion in the US and in the world, really. So it's just wonderful to welcome you, to have this excellent array of speakers to share their insights on how to get into this field within the government and how to advance and prosper in it. So thank you very much to everyone joining, and I turn the mic to our co-sponsor, Milliga.
Thank you, Taffy. That was an excellent introduction, and thank you to all our panelists and all our attendees. I know that it's a holiday for most of us, so we appreciate you attending. I'll just give you a 30-second description of what Milliga is, what we do. So I am Ankita Rithwik. My co-chair for Milliga, Tej, is going to be one of the moderators for the event. We are an interest group that was created to promote and enhance the careers of minorities in the field of international law. I think Wes provided us with a little bit of context as to how and as did Taffy, on how the importance of diversity and inclusion has become more prominent in the recent years. And so we really view the work of Milliga as being instrumental, and hopefully we would like to provide opportunities such as this and more to further that mission. We really encompass minorities of all types, of course, racial and ethnic groups, sexual orientation, gender identity, people with disabilities. Our goal is to provide sort of a wide umbrella to encompass diversity of all kinds and promote diversity in the field of international law. So with that, I'll hand it over to our co-sponsors from the Government Interest Group.
Thank you very much, Ankita. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sean Elliott. I'm the co-chair of the Government Attorneys Interest Group, along with Katie Nesbitt. Katie's right next to me. Hello, Katie, how are you? And I want to welcome you all to our discussion today. Just briefly, the purpose of GIG is to provide a forum for the discussion of international legal issues of particular interest to attorneys and other professionals working for the US government or other governments and international organizations. And the group also serves as a resource for those not currently in government, but who are thinking about pursuing such a career. So if you are a US or other government attorney or a student or seeking to transition to government work, please consider becoming a member of GIG on the ASA website. Without further ado, let me introduce the moderators of today's discussion. Tej Srimushnam is an attorney at the Federal Trade Commission in the Office of International Affairs. In this role, he engages with agencies in other countries to halt deceptive and anti-competitive conduct that affects US consumers. Prior to joining OIA, Tej litigated antitrust and consumer protection cases on behalf of the FTC. And he began his career at 2 international law firms and as a law clerk in the District Court of the Virgin Islands. Darren Johnson is an associate professor of law at Howard University School of Law, where he teaches, among other things, international human rights law, national security law, and international criminal law. His scholarship focuses on transitional justice matters and the balance between human rights and national security at home and abroad. From 2004 to 2011, he worked as an attorney advisor in the Office of the Legal Advisor at the US Department of State, where he advised on a wide range of legal issues involving Middle Eastern regional matters, political military affairs, the United Nations, and other multilateral matters. And before that, he spent 4 years at the Pentagon as assistant to the General Counsel of the Secretary of the Army. And with that, I will hand it over to our moderators. So Tej and Darren, take it away.
Thank you so much, Sean. And let me thank all of the chairs of the Blacks in the American Society of International Law, our minority interest group, as well as the government lawyers interest group, both within ASIL. And let me personally thank Taffy and Keita, Sean and Katie as co-chairs of those interest groups for their opening remarks and for their organization of this very important event. And we'd like to thank all of you for joining us who are watching today and wish you a very happy first federally recognized Juneteenth. So we've got a lot to get through today, so I just would like to set out the structure for our event. We have a very distinguished group of panelists who you will hear from in just one moment, and you will learn about them through their responses. Tej, my co-moderator, and myself will direct several rounds of questions to our panelists, and we have reserved time at the end of the panel for questions from the audience. Everyone watching today should also feel free to pose questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, as well as the chat box. And our panelists will also attempt to respond to you during the session real time. So let's jump right in. The first question that I have is, will be answered by each of the panelists in turn. And the question is, to each of the panelists, could you tell us briefly about your path to your current position, and also tell us about your current role within your government agency? So let's begin with Diane Bradley.
Good morning, everyone, or afternoon, I should say, and happy Juneteenth Day. My name is Diane Bradley. Actually, I'll start with regards to my interest in terms of what led me to where I am today. I started out law school with the intent and interest to become a civil rights attorney, and I actually became a civil rights attorney for the U.S. Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, where I worked as a trial attorney as well as attorney advisor for approximately 10 years. At the time, there wasn't a whole lot of discussion around international human rights law or opportunities for African Americans, and plus my interest was to deal with domestic issues that we face here in America with regards to discrimination issues and things of that nature. So I started out at the EEOC, then joined a private law firm based out of New York, and worked with them for a number of years on impact cases, which basically were class action cases where we brought suit against major Fortune 500 companies on employment discrimination cases. And then I was in private practice for a number of years, and with regards to dealing with still employment discrimination cases. I decided to come back to the government in 2011, basically still kind of focused on employment discrimination, but I thought my role and responsibility could be more helpful and serve in terms of helping federal agencies with issues around employment discrimination and things of that nature. So I actually worked in the Office of General Counsel for two prior agencies, one Court Services and Supervision Agency, as well as AmeriCorps. before I joined Peace Corps. I'm currently at Peace Corps as the litigation attorney in the Office of General Counsel. I provide support to the regional attorneys who work directly with counsel, as well as our post in various countries around the world. We work with the embassies as well as local counsel in these various posts around the country with regards to legal matters that pertain to issues that come up at the post. And it could range from issues around dealing with personal service contracts to criminal activity, as well as other matters. So I provide legal support and the litigation lens, if you will, to the individuals who also who work with the regional attorney, Peace Corps. So that's basically where I am now. I feel like it's a progression to expand from civil rights to human rights law in that regard, and I'm pleased to be able to have that as part of it.
Thank you so much, Diane, and we look forward to hearing more from you as the panel progresses. So I'd like to pose the same question to, let's turn to Shaba Shastri next.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. I'll just briefly say thank you to ASOL, the organization, to Taffy, to the government and the other interest groups that helped organize this, and the panel, the moderators, and my other panelists. I really look forward to this panel and to having this opportunity to chat with all of you. But turning to your question, I'm currently the Assistant Legal Advisor for Private International Law in the State Department's Office of Legal Advisor. The State Department Legal Advisor's Office is divided up into a number of sub-offices that are sort of roughly map onto the department as a whole. So you have some regional offices and some functional offices, and at the head of each office is the Assistant Legal Advisor. So that's sort of my current role. I had a long-standing interest in international affairs and went to Georgetown School of Foreign Service for undergrad, and then went to law school, and didn't really think, I don't think I thought through so much sort of how I was going to make a career in international law happen. I went to a firm because a lot of people went to firms and they came to campus, and that made it kind of easy. But when I was at the firm, I did work in the international trade practice. So I was able to get exposure to international affairs and international law that way. Some of it was domestic trade law, but nevertheless had a nexus to international affairs, and I liked that. And then I moved to the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative in their General Counsel's office after about 3.5 years at the firm. And there, that was sort of my first opportunity to really kind of practice in the field of international law. I was doing a lot of WTO dispute settlement there, as Megan can tell you about, give you a more up-to-date perspective on. But I was doing a lot of WTO dispute settlement there, and also some other advising work for policy clients at USTR. And then I was in the General Counsel's office there for 4 years, and then kind of wanted, I was needed a little bit of a change. So I went to a policy office at USTR, and I had the trade and development portfolio, mostly focused on development issues at the WTO. And I liked that. It was more negotiating experience. It kind of challenged me a little bit more in terms of kind of getting out there. And I mean, the work of multilateral negotiations is very different from dispute settlement and litigation. So it kind of gave me a new set of experiences, but I found that I missed practicing law. And so I was thinking about my next move. I wanted to stay in international affairs. So the Office of the Legal Advisor made a lot of sense. And I applied there. The way our office works is attorneys rotate through different offices within the legal advisor's office. So I have done a number of rotations before getting the assistant legal advisor job, I worked on economic sanctions, sovereign debt issues, international human rights, refugee issues, and some investment claims and disputes, where I first had the opportunity to meet Megan, and worked on cases at the Iran-U.S. Claims Tribunal and the International Court of Justice before getting this current position. So I'll stop there.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Shaba, for that response. So since you've mentioned Megan, we'll turn to Megan next. Megan, tell us a little bit about your path to your current position and what you do.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for having me first off. I was very pleased to hear Diane's story, because actually my route to international law was similar. since I was young in high school, I also envisioned myself to be a civil rights attorney eventually. And I made the decision to go to Howard Law School for that very purpose. I've been thinking about it over the past couple of days, and I don't know when exactly the shift happened in my mind where I decided I wanted to look at international law. Something must have happened between the summer of, I'm going to date myself, 2008 and 2009. But while at Howard, I decided to join the International Moot Court team. And that decision was not career focused, but just a matter of pursuing an interest that I had. And I say that, and maybe this will give some comfort to law students and younger attorneys that are trying to figure out what they want to do in their career. I did not start out with a particular plan, and everything worked out okay. I pursued things that I had a genuine interest in, and made connections with people that I had a genuine connection with. And that started me along the path, which has led to where I am today. So while at Howard, I joined the International Moot Court team. I participated in the VIS International Commercial Arbitration Moot Court team. As it turns out, one of the hiring attorneys in the Office of International Claims at the State Department happened to also be a coach for another local school for the VIS team. I made that connection with her, and I was able to secure an internship at the State Department. My internship lasted a year, and it turned into a job offer, and I stayed in that office at the State Department for 7 years, doing work similar to what Shaba mentioned, international tort claims, settling domestic and international claims brought against the government, also working on disputes before the Iran-US Claims Tribunal. So I did that for 7 years, maintained those contacts and those connections with people that I had worked with in law school, and in particular teammates that had gone on to pursue careers in international law that were also with me on the Commercial Arbitration Moot Court team. And just by maintaining those contacts and continuing my network, when an opportunity arose at USTR, one of my old classmates reached out to me and asked if I was interested. I said yes. I was able to leverage my international litigation experience at the Iran-US Claims Tribunal to secure the position that I currently have at USTR. My portfolio right now includes WTO dispute resolution, as Shaba mentioned. I also work on domestic sort of trade remedy issues involving the 301 statute, which probably doesn't mean anything to most people on this call. And one of the most interesting parts of my portfolio is advising the Office of African Affairs on various trade issues that arise on the continent, in particular with respect to sub-Saharan African countries. So that's my current role.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Megan. So why don't we now turn to our final two panelists. So first we'll go to Lorinda, and then finally we'll hear from Brent. So if you could each tell us a little bit about your path to your current position and also your current role.
Thank you, everyone. I'm very happy to be joining you guys today to have this discussion, and happy Juneteenth. So my name is Lorinda Lai, and I am currently working in the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act unit within the fraud section in the Department of Justice. And so, we focus on prosecuting individuals and companies, either US individuals and companies, or companies that trade on a US stock exchange, or any individuals who take corrupt acts in the United States in connection with paying bribes to government officials in foreign countries for business. A little bit of the path about how I got here. I was born and raised in Ghana, so I've always been, knew when I wanted to be a lawyer, but also knew I wanted to have an international component to what I was doing. I grew up with a lot of corruption, and so I have specific passion about sort of being part of the global fight to end corruption, at least curb it. I don't know if we'll ever end it. But when I went to law school, I met a great professor who focused on international criminal law, and helped her as a research assistant, working on her international criminal law textbook. Learned a lot about the FCPA, the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, and knew I had a immediate interest in trying to find a way to do that kind of work. And so after law school, I went to a firm, like most people, to pay off my debts. I did enjoy my time there. I did, criminal antitrust mostly, actually, but it was an international case that I worked on that I thought was amazing and fascinating. But then, I went to a clerkship and again, try to find my way back to the fraud section and to the FCPA unit. And I was fortunate enough to get a job there. And I've been there for the last 7 years, prosecuting international corruption cases. So that's how I got here.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Lorinda. And last but not least, Brent Harvey.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to participate in this discussion. I started as an active duty Air Force JAG coming out of law school, and I did prosecution, a lot of defense work for 7 years on active duty, then went to a law firm for about 2.5 years once I separated from the Air Force. Again, doing military related legal work for people who maybe got in trouble or needed their records corrected or something of that sort. And then I came on with the Department of Defense Office of General Counsel in 2009 and have had varying positions there. I started on what was then the newly founded habeas litigation team relating to detainees held at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. I more recently took on the attorney manager role, the managing partner, if you will, for the DoD Office of General Counsel and Defense Legal Services Agency. I handle our hiring, people, issues, money, space, all of the stuff that the other attorneys don't really want to do. And so that's where I really appreciate being involved in this discussion as we forge a way forward.
Great. Thank you so much, Brent. I'll turn it now to my co-moderator, Tej.
Good afternoon, everyone. And to echo what Darren and all the other speakers have said, thank you all for joining us on Juneteenth. Happy first Juneteenth to everyone, federally recognized first Juneteenth. And this question pertains to DEI recruitment. And I'm hoping that each of you might be able to give us a brief summary about the efforts within your particular organizations to recruit and retain minorities of underrepresented groups. Megan, perhaps we can start with you.
Sure. So at USTR, I'm not aware of any particular outreach programs that are active right now. I will say, and this is just in my private capacity, of course, that the Biden administration has been very vocal about increasing diversity in government, and also, with respect to trade. As we, a part of the work that we do at USTR involves a lot of consultation with the public. And so a big push in the Biden administration is to make sure that we're just not reaching out to the regular players, but to all people that are affected by trade issues. And so those are minority communities, women-owned businesses, and the like. So with that sort of backdrop, what I can say is that there's been a lot of thinking at USTR about how to accomplish these diversity goals of the Biden administration. What I've observed are agency-wide think groups that are actively giving thought to how diversity in hiring in our internship programs can be increased. There's been a lot of outreach across the entire agency, not just to racial minorities, but to all people, to get their input on how our agency can do a better job of increasing diversity. With this administration, our political appointees, this is only my second administration with USTR, but our political appointees have been a bit more diverse than they have been in the past. And I think that has also been helpful in the thinking process about how USTR can be more diverse, to be more responsive to the issues with trade that are facing our country and, particular insular communities. So I'm excited to see where it goes. This has been a big change from the previous administrations, at least in the brief time that I was there. And so I think there certainly will be, in the future, some sort of concrete programs for further outreach. The one thing that I will say about USTR, which is different from my experience at State Department, is that generally the attorneys that are hired are a bit more advanced in their careers. So whereas other agencies have honors programs where they can, tap into student body populations and recruit that way, it's a bit different for USTR because they're looking at more senior attorneys. So some of the ideas that I've posed when asked, and I'm really happy that people are asking now at the agency, is to give additional thought to our internship programs, how we reach out and recruit our interns and externs that are with our office during the school year. So things are progressing, but I think my agency, at least as far as I have observed, is still in the building process, but it looks very promising.
Well, thank you, Megan. I think for all of us who have spent time in government, we can appreciate that things don't turn on a dime. And it sounds like the leadership and the thinking has changed around the issue. So we look forward to seeing the proposals that will be coming out of USTR on this. So, turning to Lorinda, can you give us a little bit of background on this issue with respect to DOJ?
Yeah, so I can probably give more specific information about the fraud section and the criminal division. I'm not necessarily know what's going on in the department wide, but in the fraud section we have a diversity committee that focuses on a number of things. One of them is recruiting efforts, and so we are looking for ways to attract and recruit diverse candidates. One of the things we've been doing, for example, Megan mentioned, we have an honors program that allows us to bring in attorneys straight from law school, or if they go to law school, then clerk, and then come straight to the department. And so one thing I know the criminal division has been working on is organizing, because we're in a virtual world, it actually helps us to be able to organize a virtual panel with the HBCUs. We can actually get to a lot of students that way. So doing that, the honors program, doing that kind of a panel. The criminal division is also participating in various conferences and job fairs at conferences. So in August, there's the National Black Prosecutors Association. They have a virtual job fair in August that we'll be participating in. We're looking to the other affinity group conferences and those job fairs for this year to participate there, to try to recruit candidates. We did a panel with other U.S. attorneys' offices for how to become a federal prosecutor for all the law schools in the greater DC area, so both DC and including UVA, University of Maryland, and spoke about how to become a prosecutor. We targeted the affinity groups in those schools to make sure we had representation, and it's answering some of the tough questions. In the wake of George Floyd, it's honestly people who may have wanted to be prosecutors are sort of thinking through, is this something I want to do? Is this something I can do? And sort of having that sort of frank conversation with students and just following up and having virtual coffees with people who have, questions. So, we are actively, and very focused on trying to figure out ways to recruit and to retain the people we get. So those are, some of the initiatives that I'm familiar with in the fraud section and the criminal division.
Thank you. Thank you. Shaba, can you tell us about State Department and the recruitment efforts there?
Sure. So they're consistent with what Megan had said. There is a tremendous amount of focus now on increasing our meeting certain diversity, equity, and inclusion goals under the Biden administration, and we see a lot of initiatives being rolled out. And so I'll just list a few that are sort of at the department level, and then maybe try to make it sort of more relevant to the Office of the Legal Advisor. So at the department level, there was an appointment of a new Chief Diversity and Inclusion Officer, Ambassador Abercrombie Winstanley. So that was a very exciting development, somebody that is going to be focused on diversity and inclusion issues. She comes with State Department experience and is very enthusiastic and impressive in terms of her ambition to make the State Department a more diverse and inclusive place. So that was a really big development. We also have increased engagement with our sort of focus on engagement with HBCUs and HSIs, Hispanic Serving Institutions. And for example, the State Department has a Diplomats in Residence program that helps to kind of communicate what the State Department is doing to outside communities, and we have a number of diplomats in residence at HBCUs, and so that helps to kind of bring more communities into the fold. There is the development of a diversity and inclusion strategic plan that the State Department has rolled out. And then at the bureau level, there have also been the creation of diversity and inclusion councils to focus on diversity and inclusion issues at the bureau level. And certain bureaus have also set up dedicated diversity advisors. So we do see some more attention on this. Another sort of diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative is more workplace flexibilities. This is, of course, hard to disentangle from COVID, but I think thinking more about workplace flexibilities, how we can roll them out to make it more possible for our a more diverse set of employees to accomplish their work is I think important. And then just sort of briefly, the legal advisor's office, we have recently established a diversity and inclusion council that's trying to look at these issues at the bureau, at the legal advisor's office level. I recently took over as chair of the recruitment committee, so this is something that for the legal advisor's office. So this is something that we are very focused on and interested in and hoping to make progress on. I know that in past years, we have done events at law schools that try to reach out to communities, underrepresented communities. In some law schools, there is an affinity group for people that are going to law school. They're first in their family to go to law school, for example, and I think we've done some outreach to those types of groups. One sort of workplace flexibility or sort of inclusion element that we've been thinking about is, we've done our interviews. They were previously always in Washington, D.C. People had to fly out. It's a government interview. They had to fly out on their own dime. But we've, of course, been doing interviews over Zoom during the pandemic. And so we're thinking about, even when it's possible for people to travel, keeping the Zoom interview as an option for those that for whom flying to D.C. might not be possible. That's something we're considering now. But I think the whole range of sort of, flexibilities along those lines are important to keep in mind, because I think they do have a nexus to inclusiveness and diversity considerations. So I'll stop there.
Absolutely. And it's wonderful to hear about all the work that's being done there. Brent, can you give us a little bit of a window into what DoD's thought process is around diversity, inclusion, and equity, and what steps have been taken there?
Yes, it sounds like we're in the same lane as other government agencies. We don't have an active program, but we are pushing to diversify our population. We have a standing ad, if you will, for where people can send their resume to be considered for a position within our offices. On the DoD OGC webpage, on the General Counsel's webpage, there's information there. That is a major source for candidates for various positions. We have a lot of senior attorney positions. We do the legal work for the Secretary of Defense and other senior leaders within the department. So our main offices are, usually people who are seasoned. However, on the Defense Legal Services Agency side, we cover all of the defense agencies and DoD field activities, and there are plenty of opportunities there as well for.
Brent, I think we lost you there.
Am I back? Sorry, I had
you're back. Yes, you're back.
Yeah. I had a call come in that disrupted it. And so I am looking at the entire field. I sit up at the headquarters level, but I'm looking at the entire field and trying to work with various offices. And some of our offices have honors legal programs. We're trying to develop one up at the headquarters level, looking at some of the more junior attorney friendly positions and how we can position people there, perhaps to grow into other positions within our agency. And how do we reach the interest groups and let them know generally that here's how you would get a job with us, and here are some of the opportunities that we might have. It's a little difficult year over year to say, I know that I'm going to have a position in that office. They kind of come, I don't want to say out of the blue, but we have decent retention, and so retirements and Amazon, Rolls-Royce, Facebook, the people that we can't necessarily compete with. But I do, I look forward to talking more perhaps with some of the panelists and others within the community to get ideas as to how to reach better the diverse groups that are out there and interested, not just in international law, but across the board. We do have a sizable international law group. We have about 18 attorneys there alone. So for those on the webinar, please, I do encourage you to, if you're interested, to get information to us, because this administration and I are very interested in improving our diversity within our population.
Thank you, Brent. And I think that it does highlight something that we're seeing with all the panelists, that this is a process, and discussion is really the first step towards moving towards a more inclusive environment. Diane, could you tell us a little bit about Peace Corps and what steps are being taken there?
Sure. I'd just like to kind of echo a lot of what was already been stated in terms of the Biden administration is making it a priority to bring in a number of more diverse candidates to the federal government, but specifically with regards to Peace Corps, again, there has been a number of new DEI councils, as well as other types of work groups to help improve the recruitment of the staff, as well as volunteers in the Peace Corps who are people of color or underrepresented groups. And I'll just say again, there's been a number of statements and initiatives to work through those programs. One of the things I was impressed with regards to Peace Corps, and that one of the mandates that they've made now for all candidates who are brought on board is that they have to take a unconscious bias training course. And it's mandated amongst all employees, new employees, as well as current employees and supervisors. And I think that's an additional step that they're taking to help individuals who work there be more aware of, the potential unconscious bias that may be occurring through the decision-making, or for that matter, for individuals to kind of take a step back and be more introspective about where they are with regards to the whole issue around diversity and inclusion. So Peace Corps, I think, is taking some big steps in terms of making sure that it is being more inclusive and being more conscious about individuals they're bringing on, but also, engaged in recruitment efforts as well as establishing committees and councils around the D&I issue in communities. So.
Thank you, Diane. At this point, we'll move to the second round of questions, and I'll turn it over to Darren. These will be specific questions for specific panelists.
Thank you so much, Tez. And I'd like to take a moment to remind our attendees that are watching that you have the ability to pose any questions that you might have using the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. And we will make sure to incorporate those questions into this next round. So I'd like to pose our first question to Diane. And I'd like to just note before we enter this round that as we pose these questions, if any of our other panelists would like to weigh in on a particular question, please feel free to signal and we'll get you in there. So our first question, Diane, involves kind of you providing advice to members of underrepresented groups on what you think they should do to effectively position themselves for a position in international law within the government or a position at a foreign affairs agency. So what specific advice might you provide to someone in that position?
Yes, one of the things I would say, and this is specifically not just for the students who are potential participants in this call, but also young attorneys as well as others in terms of steps to enter into international law or human rights or the foreign affairs community. Basically, one of the biggest things, and I'll say this as an employment attorney as well, is that one of the key aspects in getting a position in a desired field is network. And I know it sounds kind of trite and tried and true in terms of what people always tell you, but it is. 70% of people get their jobs through someone that they know or someone that can put them in touch with someone who's in a decision-making position. So, what that means basically, and I know some people, like including myself, I'm not, I consider myself a little bit of a reserved, kind of maybe somewhat introvert. I'm not one who goes out and the life of the party, but I know that I have to push myself to, reach out to individuals who are in the field or area in which you're interested in. And now that, and again, I'm dating myself. Back in the day, you had to go to a reception or some type of CLE and go across the room and introduce yourself. Now there's LinkedIn, and you can basically do a search on LinkedIn on the area that you're interested in or the particular agency or organization that you're interested in, and send, you can DM someone and say, hey, I see your career path, it's something I'm interested in. Can we possibly have a coffee or, interview, informational meeting, excuse me. And basically introduce yourself and let them know that you are, interested in that particular area. I would also encourage you to, look at the CLE courses and participate in those panels, and for that matter, or make yourself available and known to the panelists so that, they can know, put a face to a name. Also, I encourage people to do pro bono work, again, as a student as well as an attorney. The number of the bar associations have pro bono elements, and they provide support to the community in the various areas that they're interested in. This is, again, an opportunity to connect, basically do the networking, in a more informal setting. Again, allow individuals to get to know who you are and show your interest. It's also something you put on your resume. So it's those type of things that, again, I think helps with regards to distinguishing yourself from the rest of the individuals who are interested in competition with you in order to get involved in, or for that matter, get selected for a particular position or interest of that nature. And basically, again, it's all about the human connection and making those connections. But now there's other methods and means in which you can make yourself more available and get in touch with those who have been doing the work that you're interested in.
Thank you so much for that response, Diane. I think we're peers. So I remember the in-person networking that we had to do back in the day, as you said.
Right.
And it's not that there are today, partially due to COVID, right? There are now virtual options for doing that networking, but it's so key. I can attest it's been key in my career as well. Back to you, Tej.
Thank you, Darren. And COVID has been an issue that has been alluded to a few different times. And I think that is the water that we've all been swimming in for the last 15 months. And Shaba, I think the question that I wanted to ask you about was, to talk, if you could, about some of the challenges that you faced being able to balance between work and some of the other responsibilities that you have. And as you mentioned, there is a nexus between flexibility and DEI initiatives. And so if you could talk a little bit about what the perspective of the State Department there is, and you personally, what do you see going back to normal, and what are some of the things that you feel you'll be able to retain from this experience?
Yeah, thanks. Sure, happy to speak to this. I will say it's a little hard to speak to sort of what the department is going to do on, reentry. I think that's in flux, or it's, they're sort of working on that. We've all, or if you haven't yet, you can see, it's publicly available, the memo that the White House put out on, asking agencies to put together a plan for bringing employees back, how they would do that, and what kind of flexibilities they would continue that have been used during COVID, in particular on telework. And sort of, I think it also signals an expectation that employees will take advantage of telework more, and that supervisors should be open to that. My own experience, I will say, it's really hard not to think about my experience of working during pandemic without thinking about childcare. I remember when when things were shutting down. At first, they were not shutting down schools and things like that. My son he's 4 now. He was in daycare at the time. He was almost 3. And I remember my husband thought, like, this isn't going to be so bad. We're going to work from home. We're going to have lunch together. And then we found out that the daycare was going to be closed. And we thought, okay, it's going to be a little different. We have there have been a variety of different solutions that we've tried to cobble together to manage childcare and working. And I'm actually, I think everybody has a mix of issues of things that are benefits to their situation or advantages and disadvantages. My husband is a professor, so he has a more flexible schedule. But our son is he's young, so he can't really play by himself at all. I mean, so we were, so we were managing a lot of different things, and that was really kind of paramount, trying to figure out how we were going to do that and work. The fact that, you can really telework, and that initially we weren't getting a lot of, that there hasn't been, I've really, in this role, I don't handle classified information, which is one of the biggest challenges for telework. So I've really been able to telework this entire time. That has definitely helped. And I think that there is a diversity, equity, and inclusion nexus here. We hear
Absolutely.
There's an article almost every day about women disproportionately having to leave the workforce because of the implications of COVID and the need for childcare. And so this is just me speaking totally in my my personal capacity. I think thinking about those workplace flexibilities is important for allowing women to continue their careers and for employers to be able to keep really good employees. So that's definitely been a big part of it. As a supervisor of an office, when I think about employees coming back in my office, obviously I will be subject to the overall guidance that we get from the White House and the State Department. But one of my takeaways from the COVID experience absolutely is that we can accomplish our work objectives with a large amount of teleworking. I think we would all like to come back to the office sometime, with some regularity now, because we'd like to see each other and we sort of miss that. But I think the combination of allowing for flexibility and sort of being very transparent. And this was true in my office even before. Our office, just for idiosyncratic reasons that I won't go into, allows for a lot of flexibility anyway. And I said, like, let's just all be transparent where, if you need to go do this or that, and you can let me know. You have a device, you can check your email, we can plan for these things. And so I think, I'll be thinking about those, trying to allow for that flexibility to the extent it's consistent with the policies that the department has.
Thank you for that, Shaba. And I think that to your point about the disproportionate impact of COVID on women, I can say again only in my personal capacity that my attitude to COVID was actually initially very similar, which was, oh, my wife and I, we can spend more time together, and it just sort of implicitly shows that there is, at least even in my home, I'd say, like an implicit sense that there are things that I don't have to think about, and I should be, but I don't. And I think that is an issue that no matter how mindful you are, there are some things that are very deep that we all have to uncover and unpack slowly. Megan, you had something that you wanted to add.
I did. I didn't know how best to tack on to what Diane's answer was. But this is just going back to the first question that you posed to her. When I was the intern coordinator for a previous office, the advice that I used to give to students, not particular to minority communities, but to students in general, was to look beyond the usual suspects. So students and young attorneys that want to go into international law, they're obviously looking at the State Department. That's like the place to be. But I encourage students to give thought to other agencies that do work that has a nexus to international law, because that can open up a door, whether it be an opportunity, a detail at another federal agency, or even just connections to people at other federal agencies that are closer to the types of international law issues that you want to work on. And so I just jotted down a few. These are particular with respect to international trade. A few other agencies that folks might want to look at that could get them closer to the ideal job that they want. I think for young students, not everyone's first job is their ideal job. Sometimes your first, second, and third jobs are stepping stones to the ideal job that you want. And so while I've been at USTR, I've been exposed to other agencies that I had no idea did, international trade. And so a few of those are the Food and Drug Administration. That's a good place to look. They have attorney jobs that deal with technical barriers to trade as it relates to food and drugs. The Small Business Administration, you'd be surprised at how many jobs that they have related to international trade. The Department of Commerce, most of those jobs deal with domestic trade issues. But if you can secure a position there, you can open a door to USTR, maybe State Department. The USDA, they have a foreign agriculture service, not specific to attorneys, but your legal skills could be useful there. And even at Justice, the Office of Foreign Litigation. So I would just encourage students and young attorneys, look beyond those places, those obvious places, because there are other gems within the federal government, other spots where you can find your niche that can open up doors for you later in your career.
Thank you so much, Megan. And as we enter our final few minutes, I want to thank our audience members for posing questions in the chat. And so our panelists will actually be responding to you within the chat to some of your questions. But we've got time for a couple more. So I'd like to turn to Brent and ask Brent if you could talk about what role, if any, mentorship has played in your career, and what guidance would you provide to audience members about what their reasonable expectations should be as mentees?
I think mentorship is critical in the practice of law. We practice law. I'm 20 plus years in, and I feel like I still have a very good mentor who I consult with frequently to make sure that I know what's going on. I think everyone should have a mentor, especially when you're new to an organization, a junior attorney, a new attorney, what have you. We're trying to reinvigorate our mentorship program wherein new attorneys have a mentor assigned to them. But if a program like that doesn't exist, then certainly talk with the supervisor and say, hey, do you have a mentorship program? And that could even be an interview interface question as well. That would be fair for the prospective employee to ask of the employer. And I think that it helps individuals get a better feel for assimilation to the organization. You're going to have quirks and differences, even if you've done international trade, it may vary how they practice from agency to agency. So getting a mentor on staff to, I think you should expect, regular interface, an open door, being able to go and just talk about issues to help you along. And highly encouraged doing so.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Brent. And you are absolutely right that mentorship is key. And I think that that's, a nice nexus to what Diane was saying about networking, right? Oftentimes out of that networking, you can form a mentor who can play a key role in helping you to find a position and later to advance. I think we may have time for one last question. Tej?
Sure. This is for Lorinda, and the question that I had for you was, and growing up as a person of color, you, like all of us, may have had a different lens to many of the issues that we all face, and that can be a challenge as you get into the workplace, but there can also be a number of opportunities there as well, and I wanted to check in with you to see, if you feel like you've been able to leverage your upbringing as a person of color in your career, and if so, how were you able to do so?
Yeah. So I guess I should have started this whole discussion by obviously saying that I'm speaking on my personal capacity and not on behalf of the department. But with that said, look, I think in my current position and even throughout my legal career, growing up as a person of color and also growing up as an immigrant, and as I said, in my current field, which is corruption, growing up in a country that had a fair bit of corruption, it's been helpful to our job involves a fair bit of travel, right? We travel internationally, we interview witnesses, we work with our law enforcement counterparts. And so I think, having a sense of, understanding what it is to be an other, to be a minority, to have a sense of how to relate to other people has been extremely helpful in building relationships with our law enforcement counterparts, in developing even relationships with individuals you're hoping will cooperate with your cases. And then I think on a personal level, being in law enforcement and being a person of color in law enforcement, understanding, when we're recommending sentences for individuals and you understand their background and how they got here, understanding, looking at the sentences we've gotten across the border for our defendants, if there's any kind of racial discrepancy, or just thinking through our role in the process, and what we should be recommending and what the appropriate recommendations are, I think has been immensely useful to bring that perspective to the team and to the office.
Thank you very much, Lorinda. Darren, I think we are at the 1 o'clock hour, so I think it's time to wrap up. I'd like to thank ASIL and all our speakers, and special thank you to you as well, Darren. It's been a pleasure working with you on this.
And you as well, Tej, and let me join you in thanking all of our panelists and all of our audience members for joining us for this very important discussion on, again, our first federally recognized Juneteenth. Thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.